Thank you for tuning in to the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. Please subscribe to our weekly Boston Bruins hockey talk on listening platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and Spotify Podcasts. We'd certainly appreciate it if you give our show a 5-star rating along with a written review. You can also subscribe to our official YouTube channel for a video version of our weekly program. If you'd like to support our show financially, please go to our blackandgoldhockey.com website and click on our affiliated Fanatics banner before shopping online. Another way to financially support our weekly program is to become a Patreon member to be eligible for weekly Boston hockey prizes and monthly Boston Bruins hand-signed jersey giveaways. Please go to patreon.com/blackandgoldhockeypodcast and donate just $1 per episode. Many thanks for the continued support and enjoy the show.
Behind that, the Sanderson, Orr! Bobby Orr! Orr from the Boston Bruins!
30 seconds left in the period. The Bruins are shorthanded. Ray Bourque.
Ray Bourque from the face-off circle to the right of Reggie Lemon. Fired it down and Whitmore threw it. Did he ever?
To Bergeron on the drive, save, rebound, he's loose, saving, kicks him loose, Bergeron scores! The Bruins goes on with the point of the dagger in their throats, they rip it out of Toronto's hands and kill the beast! The Boston Bruins have won it after being 3 down in the third!
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast, episode number 314. I'm your host, Steve Forni. As always, Mark Allred, the man here at Black and Gold. And we appreciate everybody tuning in for another episode today. Mark, how you been? What's new?
Good, Steve. Good to have you back, my friend. We missed you last week, but we did a really fun interactive live stream with our blackandgoldhockey.com colleague, Cam Manning, and he was fantastic throughout the whole program. So it was tough for him to fill those shoes, Steve-O, but we got an episode out, and it was, like I said, it was a lot of fun. But I hope you're well, and you had a great week as well. Before I go on, I do want to shout out my wife, Courtney. Her birthday was on Friday. So, happy birthday to her. And yeah, she definitely puts up with my ass. So kudos to her. But no, she's an amazing woman. I love her to death, and I just wanted to say happy birthday to her. So that was pretty much my week, was just, gearing up for a nice dinner on Thursday night with some friends in Haverhill at this place called Mr. Mike's. Played some Keno, got a really good meal, had a bunch of beers, bunch of drinks, and basically on her official birthday on Friday, we just chilled out and just ate Chinese food stuff. So it was great to hang out with her and just, celebrate her day.
I'm not like a big gambler by any means, but it is sort of disappointing when you walk into a restaurant and you're like, wait, they don't have Keno here? I'm not playing. Yeah. I want to watch those numbers roll.
What kind of place is this?
Well, speaking of, as always, our shows are brought to you by betonline.ag. Big shout out to those guys. You can use the promo code CLNS50. So make sure you go there for, we got football playoffs and hockey, basketball. We got everything going on. So please do check on our friends at betonline.ag. As always, we do have a call today, but if you wanted to call into the show and leave us a voicemail, if you got a hot take or you got a question, you got something you want to ask, feel free to give us a call. That number, 978-504-2727. And we'd be happy to play that back at the next episode. And like I said, you got questions, comments, anything you need, feel free to give us a shout out. We have a ton going on today. That we have, really up and down the farm system. I saw today Michael DiPietro is playing great for the Maine Mariners. We'll hop from Brett Harrison to Fabian Lysell today, to Carlo, to maybe we'll head out and talk a little bit of what the hell's going on out there in Vancouver. So we do have a ton of stuff to get to today. But first, we'll just take a quick look back at last week's games. And again, it's like every week, it's just more complete and utter domination. Philadelphia was playing some great hockey until they ran into the Bruins. The Bees take a 6-0 win there. Then they go to New York, a couple sweeps there, one on the island and one at Madison Square Garden. So just another the months just keep rolling on and the Bruins just keep on winning, Mark. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is, man. It's just unbelievable how much of a wagon this Boston Bruins team really is. And you're just looking last week with that shutout, 6-0 shutout. Jeremy Swayman playing well. We'll talk about him later. And then the 4-1 win in New York on the island, and then go to Madison Square Garden for a 3-1 win. And from my Amesbury math, that is outscoring the opponents last week 13-2. Absolutely crazy. That goal differential in the league standings just continues to rise for this Boston Bruins team. And it's just so good to see. Again, I'm going to keep sounding like I'm slapping myself in the face because this has never been seen from these eyes before or heard from these ears before in my life. This is just a historic season, and it's something that Bruins fans should really be proud of.
And, I mean, the playoffs, I am sort of one of those guys who I get concerned when you blow doors in the regular season, you win the President's Trophy, and then you get to the playoffs, and it's really a whole nother ball of wax. There was a while there in the NFL where the MVP would never win the Super Bowl. So I'm curious as to your thoughts, and I don't think load management is a hard thing to do in the NHL. I'm a little concerned. I don't want them chasing records. Like I know Linus Ullmark has a chance to break some ridiculous record. The Bruins have the chance to knock off a 50-year record that the Canadians held for, most points in a season. I'm not a load management guy, but I don't want them extending guys like Linus Ullmark for games just to chase some record, Mark. I'm not sure how you feel about all those things.
That's a valid point, Steve, and a valid concern because, it has happened in history. To go back just a couple of years ago when the Tampa Bay Lightning were an absolute wagon that particular year, and then in their first round series against the Columbus Blue Jackets, they got swept and they got embarrassed. So it has happened, and I can definitely grasp onto what you're feeling there. But yeah, I mean, I want to believe that Jim Montgomery and his coaching staff are smart enough folks behind the bench of this Boston Bruins team to realize who needs to sit, who needs to rest up and so on, particularly goaltenders. Linus Ullmark has been an absolute wagon himself if you talk about an individual effort. And Jeremy Swayman is starting to play very well too. So it's a great problem to have. It complements the crease very well. And now it's just outside. I believe it's very defensive heavy, and your forwards just got to continue to pull away from times when you're going to make mistakes. Like if this offense can keep going and plug away with 6 goals, 4 goals, 3 goals, you get that confidence in that you're really locking the team down and so on, your opponent down. And I think that's what Jim Montgomery really strives to do. Particularly when he's allowing his defensemen to pinch in a little bit further, have a little more trust, and it's just so good to see, man. I'm dumbfounded every time I talk Bruins hockey. It's just like, this is amazing.
It really is, and even just the not having to rely on one line. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the defensemen the last week. The defensemen are starting to score. Excuse me, but not having that one line that you have to depend on, which for years that was kind of the case. There are games where the top line doesn't score at all, and then you get 3 goals from the second line, you get another one from the third line. So I think you're right. I think keeping that consistency up and down the lineup is really important, and I think that's what's going to separate them from other teams come playoff time, where there's a lot of matchups. Other teams are going to be trying to match up against, if you're in the play, if you're in a 7-game series right now, you have a shutdown defensive forward line. Who do you match up? I mean, do you put them against the Bergeron line? Do you put them up against the Czech line? I I'm finding that having the balance that they have is going to be huge. And, you mentioned the goaltenders. Linus Ullmark had his 100th career win against the Islanders last week. And, I think that I just hate the term load management, but I think being able to manage his minutes in his games is so nice to have Swayman. Because if you just had either somebody who wasn't very good or even a guy like, without picking on him, Yaroslav Halak, who is just older, right? And you don't want him playing back-to-backs or being able to lean on Swayman to get Ullmark ready for the playoffs, I think is such a nice benefit, that they have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's going to be interesting on how it all works out when it comes to, who's going to get a majority of the starts getting down to the postseason. Going back to your defense and so on, you're talking about buying in more to the system. Coach Montgomery and even John Gruden in off-season interviews mentioned that they want more support from the back end, and that has been a huge factor this year. We know McAvoy, we know Lindholm; those can be, world-like defensemen back there, but this season, we're just seeing more shots, quality shots that are tippable. Getting net front presence is that much better for those to receive those shots from the or passes from the blue line. I just think that the way that it was like checking boxes. It really was. It's like we got to work on our defense, and we need more support from the back end. We need more from our younger players like Jake DeBrusk and Trent Frederick. And look what we're seeing. It's just it's all coming off like they're going down a list of boxes to check until the Stanley Cup is accomplished. And it's amazing to see that this is all happening in year one of Jim Montgomery and John Gruden behind the bench, and it's awesome.
And the other thing too with the defense, it's if you have a defensive pairing or a player, or if you have somebody that can be out at that blue line and be a threat, it's gonna the defensive forward's gonna have to come out a little bit and play them, and just that ability and that threat stretches the defense and opens up so much more space for the forwards down low. It's like a guy at the 3-point line who is not going to shoot. You don't even have to go out and cover him. But if he's going to keep hitting shots, you got to go out there and you got to play him. It's sort of that same mentality where you're going to have to stretch your forwards out to play harder defense against the defenseman in the offensive zone, and that just opens up so much space, either behind the net, down low, along the boards, or even right in the middle. Stretching them out opens up that middle where we know Bergeron likes to make a living in there. So you're right. I mean, Derek Forbort scored one crash in the net like he's Brett Hull, for crying out loud. Yeah. That was great to see. So you're right. The improvement, the back end to me is the biggest improvement this year. And I do think it's a lot mentality and the coaches giving them the ability to do that.
Absolutely.
And speaking of coaches, I found it interesting. Krejci played in his 1,000th career game against the Flyers. He had a comment, and I wish I could remember it verbatim, but it's just I really like this team now. I really like this coaching staff now. It's a lot better now than it was before. And Krejci, for a guy who doesn't show a lot of emotion when he talks to the media, he's very he'll tell it like it is. Like he doesn't sugarcoat anything, and it just seemed to me like it was example number 11 as to why the coaching change had to happen and the difference that it made. And I wonder if that's part of the reason why he came back. And I wonder if that's something that, I just assumed the guy would be done at the end of the year, but is there a chance we get another year out of Krejci depending on how this year goes?
All signs are pointing down to, and the shots across the bow of the departure of old coach Bruce Cassidy. We're hearing it more. We heard it from Jake DeBrusk. We heard it from Trent Frederick. Now we heard it from David Krejci. Maybe it just wasn't David Krejci's cup of tea, and maybe there was a plan for him and his family to go over to Czechia and live there for a full year. But also, I think he wanted to stay in the NHL as well, and maybe do the family thing later on. While he's like officially retired and so on, but I just don't think that he liked the message, and I think he had the option to do whatever he had to do then and now as a UFA, and came back with a different message, different approach, and obviously, countryman David Pastrnak being over there for the World Championships and so on, and other Bruins players say, probably giving him calls on a daily basis saying, "Come back, let's do this like tour together." Let's get the band back together. Let's go on the road. Let's grind it out. And I give kudos to, and I don't do this very often, and I love Cam Neely. We both grew up on the Cam Neely era. Love his Bam Bam Cam type of attitude, but I'm not a big fan of his business, or him as a president, as the president of the team. But before this season started, he came out in his preseason press conference and said, "We got a special group here that's really seems like they're willing to go out on the line for each other." And I'm paraphrasing that, of course, but to have it all come out like this, it's just it's almost poetic. You know what I mean? It's like it's almost scripted, my man. And God, I love it. I'm not going to stop saying I love it, and I'm sorry. and if you guys out there that happen to be listening and watching, and you're obviously doing this safely and at home, and you want to be a drinking game, every time I say I love it or this is awesome, drink.
I mean, it's as good a time as I can ever remember to be a Bruins fan. I mean, it's
so hard to pick on what's wrong with the team. I mean, we could talk later on as trade season comes around and like nitpick that, but it's so hard to come up with topics about what's wrong with this team, because this coaching staff has the trust to say, you made a mistake. Please go out for another 2 shifts and figure out what you did wrong, instead of just benching them, sitting on the bench, sulking, not getting the time, blah, 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 not contributing. You're given the opportunities for people to make up for their mistakes, and I love that.
And even I think Cassidy took some heat last week for calling out Jack Eichel. And it's like the same thing he was doing here. It's like, especially the guy like Eichel, that's just not going to fly.
The bread trail does not lead far from it was the friggin' coach. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, but
it's true. I mean, I was a big Cassidy guy. I really liked Cassidy. I maybe it's again, I being down there, I met him a couple times, talked to him a bunch. He was a nice guy, normal dude. But I mean, if you remember going back to before his first NHL head coaching job, he walked into the locker room in Washington like his what didn't stink, and these guys were like, "Who do you think you are?" And that didn't last long. So I remember when he was hired here, it was this talk of like, did he get over that arrogance? Did he change his approach? And I still don't know if he did. I'm not sure if he's done that yet. But it's nice to have the squad that we have now. And I mean, going back to Krejci, 37 points, going to be 37 in a couple months. Last year he was playing against sheep farmers, and he can still come right back. He can still come right back and play the way he's playing at a high level on a second line, playing a lot of minutes. It's amazing.
Yeah, 3 assists in that 6-0 win, just contributing quietly. I mean, David's just one of those types of players throughout his career, almost a point per game player. I could be wrong on that, but, it's just, he'll give you a solid 20 goals a season and probably 50 or 60 assists, just that cerebral setup guy that he's just got a good pass, good hands, and so on. And to have him here with Bergeron and so on, a teammate that did it so long ago, and Marchand, another creative freaking, forward. It's awesome. I love it.
767 points in 1,002 career games. And,
so, all right, so is that a .92?
Well, I don't do math on the air, but
I don't either.
I mean, they're round numbers. I still don't want to do it, but and the numbers are there. And even I just see it now in the month of January, 10 points in 9 games. So it's not even like he's, slowing down. I mean, the Krejci train
heating up at the right time,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the second half of the season, and the the postseason is going to be another just a different grind. And, and also, don't count out teams that have really I don't care if they're out of the playoffs and they're absolute trash dumpster fires. They're gonna want to be the people that beat the Boston Bruins, and they're gonna play their asses off to do it, and they're gonna grind heavy. So getting to the postseason is still we're basically in right now, which is crazy to think about. But also, while we're in there, you got to consider everything that's coming at you because it's not the postseason anymore, Toto.
Yeah. It starts with a team like San Jose tonight. I mean, San Jose is gonna try to come in here and wipe the floor with you. And I will be watching. We'll get into this maybe later too, but I will be watching a guy like Timo Meier. See what his deal is, because we are going to talk some trade talk, and I'm so out on Bo Horvat, but we will talk about all that a little later coming up. One thing we brought up last week, we probably talked about it too much because, again, we both agreed that we don't care about it. But it is nice that Pastrnak did get selected to the All-Star game. He'll be with Jim Montgomery, Linus Ullmark. I'll tell you what, I know sometimes they get, I think I remember a couple years ago, Tim Thomas was in the fastest skater contest at the All-Star game. I don't want any of that from Linus Ullmark. I want him to sit in one spot and stay there and not get hurt. I don't want a bump, a bruise, a shot hit him in the wrong spot. I don't want any of that stuff. Get him out of fastest skater and hardest shot. I don't want him doing any of that nonsense. Just sit there, stop some pucks, and then get the hell out of there as quick as you can.
Just wave to the crowd, Linus.
Really, seriously. But it's nice to see Pastrnak get his due. And, again, I think it's good for the league. He's a super marketable guy. I think that's sort of a no-brainer.
Yeah, true ambassadors of the game as the game grows and it gets younger and more creative as he is. Just good to have him here, and hopefully he sticks around. I know that the contract negotiations are it's putting a toll on the Bruins fan base because a lot of folks just don't understand why it's not happening. And a lot of the tweeters out there that sign the man, a lot of that I think is the fan base putting a lot of pressure on Don Sweeney to get it done. But like I've said in several podcasts, JP Barrie is one that's notorious for just waiting and waiting to maximize the best interest in his client. And obviously it's all in a percentage that the agent gets as well. The more talk he's getting, the more money he's going to get. So from several people that I've talked to about the Pastrnak thing is that it is moving forward. We've heard Elliot Friedman say that. And it might just be down to like bonus structure, and so on, that it might be locked in at $11 million for 8 years, which would be a fantastic number for me, I mean, hopefully it gets done.
Yeah, I think that the stress for Bruins fans comes from guys like Elliot Friedman. I'm gotta be honest, I'm getting a little tired of that guy. 24 Thoughts talks about Bruins Pastrnak. Then you click on it, they're talking. A week later, update on Bruins Pastrnak. They're talking. That's not an update, dude. Come to me when you have something. But to keep saying you have updates and then you have no updates is not an update. So I mean, that's the journalist in me. You put those, he puts those things in the headlines and tweets so that we click on them. So he gets more clicks, so he gets more money, and then you click on it and there's nothing there. So that to me is where the stress comes from, is because and then every single beat writer, God bless them, Elliot Friedman says that they're still talking. Now we have more useless information. If you have something, tell me. If you don't, leave it alone. But that, to me, is where the stress comes from, is guys like Elliot Friedman pumping up his own work, saying, click on it because we got an update, and there's no update. So as much as it sucks to be patient, we just have to be patient. I'd really like it to get done before the trade deadline, because then we're going to get the week before the trade deadline is going to be Elliot Friedman. Should the Bruins trade Pastrnak? Like, we're going to have more of that bull crap. So, I would tell Bruins fans to just stay away from the NHL, the NHL writers, not the Bruins writers, but stay away from those national writers, because they're just not helpful. They're not helpful. They're not useful, and they don't really have any information. So,
true.
Sorry, Elliot.
A little hard on the beaver, yeah, Steve-O.
It's journalism, man. It's
no, I get you.
We're in a weird place for journalism now, and that's one of those things that just bothers the hell out of me. But
Yeah, and a team like the Boston Bruins that really don't give you much. Don Sweeney's not out there floating anything to the beat writers or anything like that. Those guys are in the trenches trying to grind for information, just like I do. The once in a great while I break some news. It's usually from a pretty damn good source. So, but it's not coming from the team because they're so tight-lipped. They really are.
I mean, chances are a guy like Elliot Friedman's just sending a text to JP Barrie. So what's the latest? Well, we're still talking. We're still talking. Okay, cool. Let me put it in the podcast. It's just
no. I see your point and so on. I really do. But regardless of all that, I kind of think that a deal gets done right around the All-Star break. It's got to be. I don't want to really get any closer to March 3rd. I think that's when, I have a feeling it's going to get done. But what I'm more worried about is the panic that could happen in this fan base the closer we get to the trade deadline. So I'd rather get something done for everybody's sanity and everybody's stress and so on,
But lower the heart rate a little bit,
Yeah, exactly. Me too,
So, yeah.
I won't have to run to CVS to check my freaking heart rate.
It's unbelievable. But here's another one though. Please be safe at the All-Star game, Pasta. No no messing around. Don't be tweaking anything. Just go shoot hard, and skate fast, and then come home. Please, if you could. And of course, the All-Star game. I don't know when it is, but I know it's down in Florida, so that'd be nice for the guys to get out there and just relax a little bit. So.
Hey, this is Bruce from Boston Sports and Music with our Black and Gold Memorabilia Moment of the Week. We are proud to host Big Bad Bruin. Number 24, Terry O'Reilly.
Hi, Terry O'Reilly here.
Philly, I want to see the Eagles. Oh, yeah, I like the fans too. Go complete asshole. Credit card in there? Unless you want me to use mine.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Terry O'Reilly is our Legend of the Week, and you can buy something from the Terry O'Reilly Legend Collection. Take home a hand-signed JSA authenticated Terry O'Reilly jersey. Your choice of inscription, Big Bad Bruin, or 2,095 penalty minutes. Your choice, just $79. Take home this Boston Beatdown 8x10 photo with 2,095 penalty minutes inscription and JSA authentication, just $30. Or grab the Madison Square Garden Brawl, 2,095 penalty minutes, inscription, JSA authenticated, yours for just $30. Or take home the JSA authenticated Boston Bruins Terry O'Reilly autographed pucks with 2,095 penalty minute inscription, yours for just $34.
For more information on our dozens of hand-signed Bruins collectibles, visit us at our Facebook page, Boston Sports and Music Memorabilia, or email me directly at bostonsportsandmusic@gmail.com. And be sure to tune in each week, right here, to the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. Let's go!
All right, so we did have some, if there is anything that's bad to talk about, we did have some injuries. We can start with Tomáš Nosek, non-displaced fracture in his foot. He'll be reevaluated in about 4 weeks. I think this is a great opportunity for some of these young guys. I know they called up Una Kopanen, who is fine. I don't think he's really sort of the future, with all due respect to the player, but I'm wondering if this is a good opportunity for the Mark McLaughlins of the world. That's a guy who obviously played on the roster at the end of last year, so he's not breaking any new ground coming up to the NHL. He would sort of be my selection to fill in that spot for the next 4 weeks or so. But any thoughts, Mark, on the Nosek injury and where they should go in that fourth line?
Yeah, I mean, the freaking guy was already battling a hand injury and couldn't take faceoffs. That's one of the reasons why they brought Kopanen up, because he's the next best guy in the dot, to be honest with you, a big player like that. Good penalty killer, gets his sticks in the lanes and so on. So he does the small impacts that teams really want to see as your best depth, like special teams player, like Kopanen is. I do understand what you're saying about like Mark McLaughlin and Vinny Lettieri and Georgi Mikulov. even John Beecher, if you wanted to give him a shot. Those are the guys that are, your real homebred type of, players. Una Kapanen is on a two-way deal, so he's technically not a prospect anymore. But I just think his size gives him a bit of an advantage over the creativity and offensive production of other players that I mentioned that might not have a good game away from the puck. And I watch a lot of the Providence Bruins, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I'm seeing good offensive capabilities, but away from the puck, I'm not seeing great things from those players that a lot of the Boston Bruins fans want up and get other chances. I think that Kapanen is the quiet type of player that brings something that those guys can't, but we already have offensively with our top three lines. So it's primarily just a bottom offensive forward addition that can, make small impacts. It's not going to light the score sheet up and so on like many people think. But then again, I don't believe neither could Georgi Merkulov, a smaller forward that's coming up here, being thrown into a role as a penalty killer like that. I just think that that's not the appropriate way to insert a player with high offensive capabilities. I think those roster positions should be reserved for like higher up in the lineup. If you could have a chance to go right next to Bergeron and Marchand and play next to them, that's freaking unbelievable development. That's an urge to get better because I want to be with these guys all the time. I don't want to see a player like Georgi Merkulov down on the fourth line grinding it out, getting limited minutes, or not even playing at all.
So do you think, and I know there's always a lot of, between the contracts and the cap and all this stuff, it's not as easy as it sounds, but do you think that maybe it's a good idea in the next, couple months, or even during this 4-week stretch, to give those guys maybe a week where, you bring up, say, John Beecher and you give Krejci a night off, and then you send him back down and you call up, Merkulov, and then you give Coyle a night off. Is there an opportunity? Because again, their points are so high. They don't. It's nice to win, but they don't. It's not like they can't do it because they're fighting in the trenches for a playoff spot. Is this an opportunity to maybe call some of those guys up for a week? For 2 weeks, for a game. I don't know.
I believe so because everybody that you mentioned that they have the ability to go through the waiver process without any problems. Like Vinny Lettieri did pass through waivers to begin the season, so he can be called up. And I think that he'll have to stay for 30 days or play in 10 games. After that, he'd be waiver exempt. I mean, yeah, he'd have to go through the waiver process. I think that sometimes they worry about that because they're losing a player for nothing. Nobody wants to, but I could see players that are on entry-level deals that have no waivers to get those opportunities. But I'm kind of thinking that it's going to be later on in the season. We're looking into mid-March and early April. I think those are the times that you'll get the opportunities. And not only that, but you give a little bit of NHL time in the season for your Black Aces that are going to be just practicing throughout the playoff rounds as far as the Bruins go. So there's always that taste. There's always that good feeling of being with the group and everything. But I just want to see Mark McLaughlin take a bigger step in a little bit of his physicality and his offensive capabilities. I'm just not seeing the solid two-way game. But then again, the NHL does bring out the best in a lot of people. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm back. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm JoJo the Bouncing Clown. I'm never going back. I get that. But when at the AHL level, I believe it's the always hungry league, right, Steve? Always freaking hungry.
Yeah.
You got to work down there too to get those call-ups, to get noticed. And my opinion is not gospel when it comes to prospects, but I want to see more from certain players as well.
You obviously watch those games a lot more than I do, but I do. I whenever I see your posts about here are the lines for tonight, it does look like there's a lot of fluctuation. It seems like there's always guys that are on the fourth line on a Friday night, and then they're on the second line on Saturday night. Is there? Are they still trying to work on some consistency down there, or finding rhythm, or is that just sort of the way the AHL works sometimes or are they just too loaded? I mean, they have so many freaking prospects down there and guys that can play. Are they just trying to find a home for everybody?
What great question, Steve. What I've noticed in the past couple of years, whether it be Jay Leach behind the bench and Trent Winfield and Ryan Mougenel, or Ryan Mougenel, who's the coach now with Trent Winfield and Matt Thomas, I just think that they're putting players that common Boston Bruins fans see on the third and fourth line and scream, what? Why is Jakub Lauko playing the left wing on the third line? That guy should be up there on the first or second line getting quality minutes offensively. He does. I mean, I think that Ryan Mougenel and Jay Leach, they cycled through players within the lineup because they want developing players to learn all aspects of the game. Now, I know Fabian Lysell and Georgi Mikulov have primarily spent time with Vinny Lettieri, great veteran to learn from, unbelievable forward, fast, quick, leading the team in points.
Unselfish.
Just a great,
yeah,
exactly. You know, it's just a great player to be a sponge and just learn from. Those guys don't change much, but your bottom 9 does. It fluctuates hard because, Lauko could be on the fourth line, Beachy could be on the fourth line, and McLaughlin could be on the fourth line, and people freak out about that. So I just think that every time a player goes to a different area, that's where the coaching staff sees they need a little more work. You need to be a little more physical. Go down to the third and fourth line, figure it out. We'll get you back in another rotation at the higher lines. It's all about taking the systems in as a young athlete.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because it stands out, and guys.
When you look at a lineup, absolutely it does. It's like,
yeah.
And I get a lot of freak out on Twitter about that. They'll see my lineups and go, Jesus, this Mougenel, he's an idiot. And I'm like, no, he's not. I think he's just trying to get all aspects of the game in a short period of time. Because believe it or not, developing players is not quick. You have 3 years as you're locked in an entry level. And if you play well, you get extra years on two-way deals. So the window is very short for them to get all of that implemented into the kids' brains and produce a product that we're ready to call this guy up to the NHL.
And when you're getting play, we guys even mentioned like Luke Toporowski and Sam Asselin and you said Lauko. These are also guys that play pretty well, and you gotta, just because one guy's drafted here and the other guy's drafted here or undrafted, at that level it doesn't really matter, right? It's all about how they're performing and how they're practicing and how they're sort of carrying themselves. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, but no, that's interesting. That's something to keep an eye on too, because that's the one I always see McLaughlin kind of hanging out in the fourth line.
Yep.
And like you said, I wonder if it's, I don't think it's performance, but maybe there are just things like you said that he needs to work on. So that's very interesting. So we went down that rabbit hole talking about Nosek and staying with sort of the injury talk. Brandon Carlo, he got hurt last week. He did practice a little bit yesterday. Game time decision tonight. This is sort of one of the fears that I have when we talk about the trade deadline is depth on defense. I think is just so huge. And especially if, God forbid, you lose a McAvoy, Lindholm, they could be in some real trouble, I think. So what do you think the injury, well, hopefully we get Carlo back as soon as we can. I don't really feel the need to rush him. At this point, if they're game time decisions, I would say you just sit them, but what are your thoughts on that situation?
That's what seems to be going around the Bruin circles on Twitter today. And even yesterday when the news came out that he was taking regular shifts at practice and looked good, so maybe the trip to New York and what happened, I believe it was in the Rangers game on Thursday. Yeah, it was actually. When you got walked off the ice, I just said, man, this guy can't get any luck. And the trend of him getting injured right around these times as the playoffs approach is not in his favor. But fortunately, a day goes by after the game, and then it goes into work on Saturday, and doesn't have a no contact jersey on and out there doing the same thing. And I like the idea that he's a game time decision. But I'm also hearing in the circles that the Bruins may be like saying, hey, we appreciate you coming back and possibly working at 90%, but, what do you think about taking a rest? Like you're talking about, a little bit of load management on some injured players or some banged up players per se. Like Carlo's obviously itching to play in tonight's game. So, it's probably just a ding here and there, but we all know that dings can turn into bigger problems. But I'm just glad that he's doing okay and so on. I always worry about that kid, when it comes to concussion history and so on, I will never say a player is soft when it comes to stuff like that. The brain is a very delicate organ in your head and so on. So it's not to be taken for granted, and certainly nobody's soft out there. Those guys are the 1% of the world that get an opportunity to play in that, and they're all freaking warriors for going out there and sacrificing their lives for a decent paycheck and a better life for their family and friends.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I also wonder if this is a good time, as we talk about load management, do they look at a guy like Zaboral and say, we want to get this guy 10 more games, or we want to get Mike Riley back in the lineup because we might need him here down the stretch. So maybe it's sort of like we were talking about at the forward position. Maybe the team is also looking at that and saying, we really like to see. I mean, I feel like Zaboral's been here for 10 years. I still don't know what I'm getting with that player, So maybe this is an opportunity for them to kind of look at what they have for other options, because I just, depth on defense scares me to no end. It always has. And I've never had a problem with them going and getting Greg Zanin at the trade deadline because you gotta have bodies back there. I mean, I remember poor Tommy Cross got called up to play a playoff game, and he was just not ready. No,
he was not ready, and I was not happy by that call up at all.
And I wonder too about guys like Nick Wolf or Kai Visman, or I'm just looking at that roster and thinking about you have some depth with Didier. I forget that Anton Strawman's down there, so you do have options, but it would be interesting to see those guys at the NHL level again, see what they got.
Yeah, Didier can't come up until he signs a two-way deal. So the Boston Bruins right now are 47 of 50 contracts. They could sign a two-way and get him involved, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I think they would give it to somebody that has a contract already. Obviously, Nick Wolf is a big body and so on, but I'm not sure exactly what he provides for the Bruins' future. I think he's just a project that they continue to work on, like they had with Wiley Sherman from Harvard, and then they had Rob O'Gara from Yale, really, really big defenseman and so on. That just didn't pan out after their entry-level deals, and never really continued to play hockey after that, if I'm not mistaken. One of them might be overseas, and I think Rob O'Gara is an assistant coach for Yale now. So it's just, you do want to get bigger defensemen involved in your system, but sometimes it just doesn't pan out. I like Nick Wolf. He obviously provides a physical presence and so on, but I like the way that this Boston Bruins are working with a defenseman and being that stay-at-home type of guy, but also transition well out of the zone and not be able to give up the puck. Where I see a player like Nick Wolf kind of turnovers happen in quite a few, and it's kind of hard to see if that would translate into an NHL game, and would that be a mistake call-up, I would actually give it to somebody with experience. Connor Carrick's down there as well.
Carrick. I don't know if he's ever played in the NHL, but I know he's just been around. He's
really played in the
NHL guy. Yeah,
he's been in the you could definitely call up Mike Riley because he's got NHL experience. Connor Carrick does too. Strawman can as well. But if I'm not mistaken, if he comes back up and needs to go back down, it's the waiver process again. I just want to get rid of that $1 million, to be honest with you, in my opinion. Yeah. I like Anton Strawman and a great career and so on, and kudos to the player for continuing to grind it out as an older veteran, but that's $1 million we could be using right now.
And I don't know, I'm not really just sure how well his game translates to the playoffs. I always, even when he was in the playoffs, I always just thought he was a guy you could pick on, throw into his corner, when you're coming down.
For me, Strongman's just been there a couple times. He has raised the cup a couple times, and he's been through these experiences. So it's just to me, the whole thing was just a veteran kind of, let's get another leader. We can't have enough leaders in the room,
Yeah. And, you're right. For Carrick, 34 games with the Capitals in 2013-14. He played 67 for the Maple Leafs in 16-17, another 14 for Dallas. So, he's 29 for the Devils, so he's been there.
Steve Dangle used to love him.
Really?
Oh, yeah. When he was drafted, he talked to him. When he was drafted, he talked to them all up and so on, and then all of a sudden it was just like, oh, he's gone.
Yeah, interesting. His brother's really good too. I think his brother might be in San Jose. We might see him tonight.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. So interesting. Well, it's nice to know. It's nice to know that they have the depth there. And I think it'll be interesting to see what the roster. I'm not up here thinking that we should be breaking up lines just to give other guys playing time down the stretch here. But it'll be interesting to see if we get some load management. And if we see any sort of movement from the AHL to the NHL, it's been a lot better than what we have here in Springfield, where it's like these guys spend more time at Bradley Airport than they do in the practice facility. But it'll be interesting to follow. Looking ahead and sort of with that, like you said, trade deadline coming up March 3rd. A lot of rumors swirling around out here. I got to tell you, I'm out on Bo Horvat, and again, I don't mean to pick on Bruins fans, but the Bruins fans love to bash Sweeney for his drafting, and some of it is justified, some of it's not. But if you're going to bash Sweeney for he can't draft, and then immediately say, well, I want to trade the kid that he just drafted, for somebody else. Like, don't bash the draft and then say, I don't want Fabian Lysell, get him out of here. Like, we got to at least see what we have here. So I just think that Bo Horvat, the price is going to be so high, and I'm not really looking to sort of disrupt the whole future quite yet. What are your thoughts on some of the rumors that they've had been involved with here, Mark?
Last night, Elliot Friedman and Jeff Marek were on the panel at Sportsnet, and both of them said that the price would be 3 roster players and 1 top-end prospect. I'm not sure if the Bruins have the asset to get a deal like this done at all. And I would honestly pass, just for the fact is that, we might not have to pay such a heavy price for somebody that could come in and possibly give us the same amount. I have a couple of players involved, and one of the reasons why I think about these players is just the fact is that they have an extra year of term. So the cost might be not equal to a Bo Horvat, but you still have a year under contract. So I really like, and if the Boston Bruins are like looking at centers to increase the depth up the middle and really go for it, I really like Elias Lindholm from Calgary. He's a center, right wing. He's 28 years old. He's making $4.8 million right now. He's a UFA after next season. So you have a whole year to negotiate with him. But the best part about it is if the Boston Bruins don't get a deal done, if they don't get the cup done this year, you have a player like this in the mix for next season. Bo Horvat, in my opinion, I don't know him. I don't know his character, personality, whatever. But sometimes in the NHL, a player like Bo Horvat gets all pumped up and ready to go to the best team in the NHL that's really a wagon and possibly going to win a Stanley Cup. But if that goal is not accomplished, that player might not be happy, and now he's a rental. Now you gave up assets for somebody you cannot resign and wants to test the market to find a place where he can win. That's a scary thought when you're thinking about Bo Horvat and the price to pay. If he can come here with term and you can work out a Pasternak extension, I'm for it. But I still think that the price to pay is just a little too much. Number one, for a Boston Bruins prospect pool that desperately needs to be replenished. I don't care how Providence is doing right now, second place in the Atlantic, fourth place in the league, and so on. That whole prospect pool needs to be replenished, and you can't be giving away first-round picks all the time.
Yeah, and Lindholm, from what I recall, kills a lot of penalty. I mean, he's really good on special teams. You can put him on the power play. You can put him on the penalty kill. Obviously, with the last name, he's Swedish, so he's got that connection with
Jack Edwards. Jack Edwards would lose his mind.
Oh.
I mean, he's already practically there, but if he's got two Lindholms on a team, it don't make it right for that head.
and again, you got PJ Axelson in the system, who's done a really nice job of scouting and sort of has an eye for talent.
If I'm not mistaken, Steve, if I'm not mistaken, Steve, the Boston Bruins were very interested in Lindholm when he was drafted, and I think you're right. I think PJ might have had something to do with, hey, if he's available, I'd take him, but unfortunately, he wasn't. He went a lot sooner than the Bruins expected. But when trade talks are swirling, the Bruins are sometimes in on him because 45 games played this year. He's got 14 goals, 27 assists, 41 points. I mean, the guy's almost a point per game player. He's just something that I believe you could add, and you have the extra year. The other player,
and he's an assistant captain too.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like this game though. Well, you got more on this list. I could do this all day. This is fun.
So the other one I was thinking about, it's a 29-year-old, and he's a straight up center, and that's Mark Scheifele. He's a UFA after this season. He's a little higher on the annual average value at $6.125 million per season, and he's probably going to want to get a raise. But in 46 points for him, he's got 26 goals, 14 assists, 40 points. Another player that he's got another year you could talk to him and so on. And again, a player that if you're going for it might add some value, but also if your goal is not accomplished, you have him for another season to really go for it next year. And that $6.125 million is a little scary when you're still trying to lock down David Pastrnak to an 8-year extension. Salary cap's only going up $1 million this upcoming season, and then possibly another 4 point something after that. But I don't believe Gary Bettman as far as I can throw him. So don't take that as gospel.
Well, I mean, another guy, I always liked him because I think he looks like Kurt Cobain. But another guy kind of like Lindholm, again, he's been an assistant captain almost his entire career, kills penalties, good on the dot, can run the power play. And, Winnipeg's a total mess, and he's putting up pretty good points. He's out himself in this little season. So he does have a little bit of an attitude. And I do feel like every time the Bruins play Winnipeg, he gets, he gets caught up with one of these guys. I don't know if the room likes him, I guess is what I'm getting at. But
I got one more if you want to talk about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so the other one is a straight up long shot and definitely can be taken care of during the off season. But if the Bruins wanted to possibly not pay a huge ransom, they could look to the Chicago Blackhawks and talk about acquiring Max Domi. He's a center. He's a left wing. Kind of gives you that nastiness, that growl, that playoff kind of in-your-face attitude. And I think that could put up a big goal here and there if he's called upon. He's a UFA after this season, like I said. Only $3 million per season. In 43 games, he's got 13 goals, 17 assists, and 30 points. That might be something that they could explore right down to the wire of the March 3rd trade deadline. But that's a break glass in case of emergency. Steve, you look like you really like Max Domi.
Well,
idea.
it just as you were talking, I was Googling him because that's a guy that I feel like this is 2 or 3 years now that I've looked at him in the trade deadline and thought, well, he can't be that expensive. I know he's not signed for a lot of money. I feel like he's constantly bouncing around the league, and I feel like it's not really his fault. I mean, he's just been on sort of crap teams his whole career. He's a smaller guy, but he's got a lot of sandpaper to him. He would, I just think, learn so much from hanging out with Marchand and sort of how to tailor his game to it. But like you said, he's versatile. He can play the wing, can play center. I think if he just had himself, and I'm starting to feel bad for him because he is bouncing around to all these terrible teams. If he could get himself situated somewhere, in a good system with good coaching, good leadership, I think he could be a huge asset. And I don't think that he would cost as much as some of these other guys that you mentioned. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I don't think it would cost very much.
And I know that in the rumor mills, before the season started, there was a lot of people saying that because he was on some pretty bad teams that he might have shown a little bit of that frustration, like he's not being utilized properly in their particular systems, which ultimately, gives off a kind of a vibe that the player is not happy and so on. And, it might have been internal, which nobody knows because we're not in the room. But, I just think that, Ty Domi is his father, and he does have some snarl, like you said. He adds that playoff kind of grit that everybody's really clamoring for. That you have to lock down. If they're gonna come at you hard, you have to play harder. Kind of mentality. And I always say that it's the team that scores the most goals wins the games. But those people come back and say, yeah, but the grind to get that goal is also important as well. I just think that that's a really lower price. I mean, to get Domi out of Chicago, I wouldn't give more than a fourth or fifth if available.
I think the ask would be reasonable, and I know that they're selling. Everyone's talking about Kane and Taves, but I don't see why they wouldn't be in the interest to move him too. And I mean, again, drafted by Arizona, who sucks. 2 seasons with Montreal that weren't good. They did make the playoffs that year, but in 1920. So I guess they had a halfway decent run there. But then, a season and a half in Columbus and then Chicago. And I mean, I remember him, he got moved last year at the deadline to Carolina and played really well in the playoffs, even against the Bruins. I mean, he finished last season in the playoffs, 6 points in 14 games, +6.
Yeah, so, I was shocked that he didn't get another deal.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, playing so good against the Bruins in that playoff series and the second round. But yeah, I was shocked that he didn't get a deal. He was a free agent.
Yeah. So I like a guy too that's not a pure center, because if you get a second, what's the guy who's labeled a second round or a second line center, third line center, then you're going to have to do some reshuffling, and you can't just be like, hey, Coyle, here's our shiny new toy. Go hang out in the fourth line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Go hang out on the right wing.
Right, exactly. So,
yeah.
So that's interesting.
I do have some news about Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane. It sounds like from our boy Dom Tiano in a conversation that both players might just want to wait till the trade deadline. That they haven't been asked to move their no trades or anything like that. So that might just be a flash in the pan. But I think there's 2 teams that Taves would like to go to. I know Patrick Kane's going through a little ding that could be something serious, that they might even shut him down for the season to have the surgery now and re-sign him for another year and then get him back healthy next season and then trade him from there. So there's a couple possibilities right there that what could happen, but I don't know. I mean, let me ask you, would you rather do Horvat or Taves?
I mean, honestly, kind of weird to say, but neither. But I guess if I had to, I would go with Taves. If we're doing it for 1 year, I would go with Taves, because I know he's a leader. No questions asked. He's going to just come here and play his game and win face-offs and kill. I mean, he's another guy who can take penalty kill load management off a guy like Bergeron, who I still think is killing too many penalties. I guess if I have to do it for short term and based on what we have to give up, I'd go Taves.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. Just for the fact is that I don't think the price is going to be that expensive. I think the biggest hurdle between the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks in a trade is how much money is Chicago going to retain.
Right.
Because, I mean, the AAV doesn't change throughout the year. The money does change because of the prorated games. We're halfway through the season. The real money isn't really that much, but still, it's that AAV that has to come down for anything to happen, and hopefully that doesn't, with any bonus structure. It wouldn't be a bonus structure; it'd be a trade. That won't have any effect on the Pasternak signing anytime soon either. But yeah, I like the experience. I like what he could give. I'm not too thrilled about a player that kind of covered up some pretty nasty shit in Chicago for a while. That's something that's never going to go away on that jacket but I don't know. It's just, there's so many different things. When you want to win, teams like the Boston Bruins, when they want to win, obviously don't pay too much attention to the room because, the whole Mitchell signing earlier this season, and then, it's just very weird.
Yeah, it is. And I do think maybe that's why I instinctively sort of get this. I get a little stink face when we talk about Chicago in general, and especially their leadership, because that was, Taves was kind of, even they were asking him about it, he just didn't give them the answers that I thought you should really be giving based on that situation.
Right.
And again, he had the opportunity to be like, you know what, I don't even want, this is such a gross situation. Trade me now. I don't even want to be here. And he didn't do that either. So,
right. Doesn't speak high on the character.
No, it really doesn't, which goes against everything that I sort of know about Taves. I just always assumed he's like Bergeron light, he's always sort of puts his priorities in the right place, and I didn't really get that vibe. One other quick name for you, and because again, I'm so focused on the back end, I'd be on the phone calling to see how much John Klingberg costs. Defenseman out there in Anaheim, 6'3", big dude, been around, can play, doesn't need a lot of babysitting. I think he's only on a 1-year deal, so chances are Anaheim would probably be interested in moving him. So that'd be a guy I'm looking at in the back end. I haven't dug too deep into it. I wish I did. I wish I wrote down 4 or 5 names like you did, because I could do some digging, but.
Well, if you're talking about defense, Steve, I wouldn't mind giving a flyer to a guy like Luke Shen. I've been watching videos on him. I've been watching a couple of Vancouver games. He's a pain in the ass to play against. Prototypical Bruins type of player for these types of seasons and the postseason. And real cheap, $850,000. He's only on for 1 more year. This is a typical rental. This is the type of stuff that you go out and get and on the cheap, and you don't overpay. So that could be a possibility as well. But he's a type of player that's going to give you that snarl that you talked about earlier, and
probably wouldn't mind being scratched. Like a guy like Klingberg's going to want to play, and Shen's the kind of guy where you could be like, well, listen, we're only putting you in the lineup like every other night.
Is my name going to go on the cup though?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Well, that was great. That was a lot of fun talking trades. I feel like I gotta go fire up the Xbox. And, do a little EA Sports action with some maneuvering.
Oh boy, you and Chris Nosek from JDF Sports will get along.
I admit I don't do a lot of video games, but I've had every NHL game since '94. And that's the thing that's my sweet spot. My students are like, awesome. What games do you play? I'm like, hockey. That's it. Yeah. Even though every update now is just a bona fide roster update. They don't change the game anymore, but that's okay.
Exactly.
A good time, I think, now maybe to talk about our friends at betonline.ag. Mark, what do you have for us from them?
Absolutely. Our show sponsor, betonline.ag, comes at you, and they remain your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from the NHL, NFL playoffs to pro and college basketball, UFC, and MMA, and more. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at betonline.ag. With live betting options, free contests, live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. BetOnline is truly the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head over to the betonline.ag website today or use your mobile device to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure you use our promo code CLNS50. That's CLNS50 to receive your fantastic rewards. betonline.ag. It's where the game starts.
And while we're doing a little bit of house cleaning, some news over the last week is that Vox Media cutting a lot of jobs, especially hockey writers. And first of all, it sucks for the industry. Broadcasting and journalism right now, I think, is sort of a hot mess. Looking at the money that Tony Romo is getting to be the worst analyst on the planet is a great example of it. But if you recently got let go, or if you are looking to get back in the business, or if you are just a kid sitting on your couch who just watches 60 minutes of hockey every game, and you want to produce content on a regular basis, reach out to Mark, because we have plenty of opportunities here for all kinds of content, whether it's writing, podcasting, whatever you like. And it may seem overwhelming, but as I've talked about in the past, it's as simple as watching a game and taking notes, and open up your phone, open up that notes app, and just talk about the game as it's happening. And then after the game, you can take those thoughts and you can turn them into talking points, whether you're writing them or podcasting. So sucks to hear that about the people at Vox, though.
Yeah. SB Nation is one of the bigger outlets when it comes to hockey, and a lot of great people and content creators came out of SB Nation, and paid opportunities. They might not be full-time jobs and so on. Some of them might be, but still, it's to lose your passion and something that you've done for many years as a team. It's tough to walk away from. But I just want to say, if any of those employees that are affected by these layoffs, and I think they're happening at the end of February, if you happen to like the Bruins or anything like that, please get in touch with me. Send me an email at blackandgoldproductionsllc@gmail.com. We'd love to have your content over on our platform. We do have some paying opportunities here at B&G. Not all of them, but obviously something that we could definitely discuss. But yeah, you want to open the doors for others that might not have the funds with a small sports media company as we do to provide the audio, video, and the listener Bruins talk on all the worldwide platforms. So the door's open, and please get in touch, because we're always looking for more content to create and grow our family that much more.
And all you have to do is put a headline like update on Pasternak and contract negotiations, like Elliot Friedman does, and then before you know it, you're like a real journalist. That's all you need to do nowadays. So,
we need a little more than that, but
yes, we do.
We're on the right mind, though.
Yes, we do. So it's interesting. We talked at the beginning of the show about how little there is to complain about this team. And I think one of the things that was discussed is Ben Swayman. And he's just been red hot, as Ullmark is. I do still think when the playoffs come around, it's Ullmark's net. No doubt about it. But what have you seen from Swayman in the last week? And I know in the past, Mark, you've talked about him being a really good trade chip. Where do you stand on that as we move along here?
Sway's been really good lately. And like we talked a little earlier, this is a great time for him to find his game again. It's not a secret anymore that I think he was going through a really hard breakup. He mentioned it on Instagram, and that kind of made news and so on. So that's never easy when you walk away from a loved one. But he's just a consummate pro. He's worked and grinded through some hard times and really got back to being where a lot of the Boston Bruins nation knew where he was going to be. The next up and coming Boston Bruins goaltender for the future. And like I said, it's just really good to have him firing on all cylinders, working with Linus Ullmark, who's your starter and will be for the playoffs, but still having that camaraderie, the friendship and so on, to just work as a team and not as individuals will always stick with me when you think about this tremendous young man. Leading into that, I still think that he could be a trade chip. And I'm not saying now. I say we keep everybody together. for the goal that's at hand, and that's winning a Stanley Cup in 2023. But if it doesn't happen, I'm still on board that if you need an asset or two to cross that threshold of a cup because you didn't get it done this season and you need to make a splash for next season to really solidify that goal in that window of David Krejci possibly coming back or Patrice Bergeron and so on, I really think that he could be the type of player that would garner a nice piece coming back, or maybe two. All goaltenders, all teams out there are looking for goaltending. Goaltending is, there's not that many positions out there to fill, especially at the NHL level. So people are going to pay. So I think that he could be a very good chip. Now, hear me out. I also think that Brandon Bussey has way higher upside than Jeremy Swayman, even at the American Hockey League level and no NHL games. So this could be a bit of trade maneuvering by Don Sweeney in the offseason to get Bussey signed and be your backup and have Linus Ullmark the next 2 seasons as your starter. And then now Brandon Bussey is your guy that's going to be, your future asset moving forward. And I just think that the way that Mike Dunham and Bob Essenza have worked with these goalies, it really doesn't matter to me. They're going to be really good. So, and it's a business. I like Jay Sway too. I don't want to see him traded, but I also know that you have to give to get to, so that's where I still stand on. Let's keep him this year. Let's complete the goal. But if needed, he could be a trade asset at the end of the season. And I think he's probably going to sign 2-year bridge deal and don't give him protection. If you give him protection, they don't want to move him then.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I'm with you. I think what he and Ullmark have together is special. I think that more than any other position in that sport, the goalie to goalie relationship is so important. And I think that what they have now is very special. But I mean, just real quick, I wrote them down. I mean, 7. I mean, they have 7 goalies in the system. And that's ridiculous. So, I mean, It's not like you lose Swayman and then you're screwed. I mean, because you have all these other options behind him. But I'm sort of with you. I think that if you have a hole this offseason and you need a position and there are teams out there starving for goaltenders. I think that he's probably he's the option that will get you the most return on investment. And, we don't have to get into it now, but one of the things that always sort of blow my mind is how the Bruins lucked into Swayman in that draft. And the person they have to thank for that is actually Zach Rinaldo. And that's not something we have to talk about now, but if you go back and you look at that awful, ridiculously stupid Zach Rinaldo trade that the Bruins made.
Oh my God. There's a trade tree on this?
Oh yeah. No,
where you need to forward this to me. I need to see this trade tree.
Well, I don't necessarily have it as a tree, but and I could just real quick, the 3rd round pick that they gave to Philly for Zach Rinaldo, they took a goalie. Between that pick and Swayman, 10 goalies went off the board.
Oh.
10. So if the Bruins were picking it at that 3rd round pick, chances are, I mean, if Swayman was number 10 on that list for everybody else, I doubt he was number 1 for the Bruins. So by trading that 3rd round pick and getting Zach Rinaldo, the Bruins might have saved themselves from themselves and had Swayman pretty much land in their lap. So,
no shit.
It's I still have a saved old rant from me on the radio talking about, I don't know who this Swayman kid is. He's probably going to be terrible, but how the hell could you get Zach Rinaldo for a 3rd round pick? And sure enough, it all came back around. So they really lucked out with him in general. And I love the kid. I love that he wears number 1. But
very old school.
It's something to look into. Something to keep our eye on this offseason. And like you said, in the meantime, the goal is the cup, and Swayman is a massive part of what they have going on right now. And I think it's good to keep it together. But yeah, Bussey AHL All-Star I saw too.
Yep, him and Vinny Lettieri are going to. I don't even know where the All-Star game is this year. Shit. But anyway,
I like to think Laval. Is it maybe Laval?
Yes, it is in Quebec. It is in Quebec. That's right. Yeah, so Brandon Bussey, the goaltender, and veteran forward Vinny Lettieri. Vinny Lettieri, I think, is making his second All-Star appearance, while Bussey is making his first in his rookie season. And he's just been really, really good with the Providence Bruins. Like I've said, I've been really pumping this guy's tires because I believe that he is the type of goaltender that Senza and Dunham lost in Vladar, and I think they really wanted to get that prodigy type back. And they found a guy that's 6'4" and 200-something pounds, and he's a massive man in the crease. You've seen him in Springfield, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's huge.
He's huge. I mean, I just think he's just got the mental tools and so on with his height to be just a little bit better than Jeremy Swayman. I watch video of Swayman as he's developing, and I just see a little bit of difference. And I just see that prototypical Senza and Dunham freaking training. You can definitely see it. And I just like the way it's going. So like I said, I think Swayman's going to be a great goaltender, whether it be a Boston Bruin or somewhere else in the NHL. But, there's always that one guy that's coming up that could be that much better.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are there. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know if it's goalie Bob, or I don't know who drafts goalies or who has their eye on these things. But I mean, I remember, I think it was Vladar. We had a guy who worked for the Thunderbirds who dealt a lot with, Big Ten hockey. And he was like, this Vladar kid can't get out of his own way. Like, he's got no chance. And something happened, right? Something clicked, and now he's an NHL goaltender. So they keep crushing the draft at that particular position.
I'll tell you what happened, Steve. It was a high ankle sprain that turned his career around, because Senza and Dunham literally throughout his recovery were with him with video, saying as a big goaltender, you don't need to make all these massive moves and come way out to cut down the angles. Minimize your movements. You'll be a better goaltender because you're bigger. You take more energy to move across side to side as a bigger goaltender, believe it or not. And they minimize that so he can, position himself accordingly.